Good afternoon, Professor Koester. Thank you for welcoming me into your home to hear you tell your story. This is a unique story that covers many years of your life. It is my honor as a personal friend and former piano student to be part of this journey today. Please tell the story of how you began your piano lessons as a boy.
I began my piano lessons when I was 9, which is a little bit late to be starting, but I started because my sister was taking lessons and I walked with her to her lessons to be company for her, and my mother said, as long as you're going, you may as well have lessons too. And I had my first piano lesson on the day that the first name was pulled out of a fishbowl to start the military draft for World War II.
You say to some students that if piano is your instrument, she has no other mistress. When did you know that you wanted to take the study of piano further than when you were a boy?
As I was taking lessons, I did what so many other young people do. You just did what you were expected to do. But when I was in the 9th grade, there was a movie called A Song to Remember. It was about the life of Frédéric Chopin. And I saw that movie, and I loved the movie, I loved everything about it, and I was bitten by the music bug, and the music bug has never let up since then.
Talk about your time at CSU as a student. Weren't you in the first graduating class at Baptist College?
I was in the first graduating class of Baptist College at the time. I went back to school at age 33, and I had a wonderful time there. I was probably one of the 4 or 5 oldest students in that first class, but what was rewarding to me was that the young people just accepted me as just somebody else. And it was a wonderful time, and I had a lot of good times with the students at the school, and I became a good friend with one young man. We were both in the German class together, and we taught school for a couple of years together, but unfortunately he had a problem and he ended his life.
You attended Peabody Institute in Baltimore, Maryland. Will you relate that experience?
That was a wonderful time in Baltimore with the Peabody because I had such a wonderful piano teacher, Austin Conradi. He was born in Baltimore and studied at the Peabody as a young man, and then came back later on as a member of the faculty, and he was there, I guess, 35 years on the faculty, and he was a wonderful pianist and a wonderful teacher, and he inspired me to simply work my head off and learn lots of music, which I still play today.
You have a story that you tell about your piano genealogy. It is quite impressive. As a tongue-in-cheek expression, sometimes you will place your hand on the head of a student and go through the musical lineage. Then you will chuckle, but I will say as a student, it is an honor to be part of this. I knew when you did this to me, it was an honor for me. Please talk about this.
Every pianist can trace his history. The teacher that I started with, she studied with a man who studied with Mr. Conradi. Mr. Conradi studied with Ernest Hutchinson, who was the president of Juilliard School for many years, and Mr. Hutchinson studied with a man named Stavenhagen, who had been a pupil of Liszt, and Liszt had been a pupil of Czerny, and Czerny had studied with Beethoven. So my genealogical list goes back to Beethoven, and so does the list for all of my students. There's another list that we can follow also. The 2 probably greatest piano teachers of the late 1800s were Liszt and a man named Leschetizky. Leschetizky lived to be about 1919, so he was considerably longer than Liszt. But so many famous pianists can trace their lineage back to Beethoven through Leschetizky, because Leschetizky had studied with Czerny, who had studied with Beethoven.
And so the tongue-in-cheek part of that question, where sometimes you'll put your hand on a student's head and say the lineage, could you tell about that story too?
Well, you know, in some liturgical churches, when ministers are ordained to the ministry, other ministers lay their hands on them. The same thing happens with bishops. And in the liturgical church, it goes all the way back to St. Peter. So, and having a student kneel and my placing my hands on top of that student's head, I give them the blessing going back to Beethoven.
That is so wonderful. You were always a piano instructor, even when you were teaching English for a while. That was quite a schedule. When did you decide to attend USC to attain your master's degree in piano performance?
I graduated from CSU in 1969, and in '72 I started going to Carolina to work on a master's degree in piano performance, and I got it in 1975.
CSU was always near and dear to your heart. How did it happen in 1974 that Mr. Yost hired you as an adjunct piano professor?
Mr. Yost had heard me play when I gave a graduation recital at Baptist College at the time. My degree was a double degree in English and piano. And when he needed somebody to help him, because there were so many students, piano students at Baptist College, he remembered me and he called, and I decided that I would do it. And I've loved every minute of it.
In 1981, you were hired as a full-time piano professor. What other subjects have you taught over the years? When did you become the head of the piano department?
For many years I taught music appreciation, and for many years I also taught music history. And some years ago, Dr. Bullock, I believe it was, decided to have different people coordinate the work in different areas, one in vocal, one in instrumental, and one in piano. And since I was the only full-time piano teacher, I was given the job.
You have always been active in giving solo concerts. This year you have given several concerts. Some have been out of town. What concerts are your two most momentous of all time?
I don't know. Every one of them was a momentous occasion.
When you played with the symphony, maybe?
Well, I played with the Charleston Symphony many, many years ago, and that was a wonderful experience. Every time I've played at the school, and since 1992 when we got the Steinway, I think I played every year along with another piano teacher. Every one of those was a very momentous occasion for me.
Please tell us about the time you were asked to go to New York City to pick out the Steinway, the concert grand that we have now at CSU.
As a result of a visitation by the NASM committee to investigate what our music school was doing, the committee recommended that we get a decent concert instrument. So the powers that be said we had $25,000 to buy a piano, and I was given the job of looking for the piano. There was one in Atlanta for $25,000. There was one in Raleigh for $25,000. There was one in Wilmington for $25,000. I went to Wilmington and tried the piano, and I didn't like it at all. Then I found out there was one for $25,000 in Columbia, and I liked it better than one in Wilmington. I didn't go to Atlanta because I felt it was too old, nor did I go to Raleigh. We got the piano from Columbia, and we never had an opportunity to use it because this was 1989. The piano was backstage in the chapel. Hugo came along in 1989, took some of the roof off above the piano. The whole piano was flooded with about 3 inches of water. We were able to get the water out. The piano was damaged somewhat, but with the insurance for the piano and the school giving some more money, we were told we could get a new Steinway. So that was a blessing from the Lord. Charleston Southern needed a brand new Steinway concert grand, and we got it. And there was a Steinway dealer in Charleston, Keys to Music, just become the Steinway dealer. The first piano Keys to Music sold was a concert grand Steinway to CSU, and the owner of the store, Harold Fox, took me to New York to the Steinway Hall where they had 5 Steinway grands set up one alongside the other. This is what they do for anybody. And I played on all 5, and we selected the one that we wanted, and it was shortly shipped down to CSU, and we still have it. And it's a wonderful piano with a perfect action that I picked up for myself.
We know about the Horton School of Music as it is today. Please look back and let us know what the School of Music was like in the early days of Baptist College.
In the early days when I became an adjunct in 1974, there were so many students there. At one time, I think we had 5 people teaching piano. Mr. Yost, of course, was the college piano teacher. He also was the head of the department, and he had to teach music appreciation and music history. So he didn't have much time to teach piano students. That's why there were so many helping out with the piano teaching. And one reason I think we had so many students was Anderson College was a junior college at the time, and many Anderson students came down to finish their degree at Baptist College. It was just an exciting time for me because I was doing something that I always wanted to do and loved to do, and I had such good students to work with.
You have had hundreds of students study piano with you. Many have kept in contact. Several have brought their children to CSU to study with you. Your students have gone forward to be professionals in all walks of life. You go over and above for your students. Tell us about the student who asked if she and her husband could have their wedding at your home. Also, tell of the student who invited you to escort her for a CSU function because her father couldn't attend.
The student that had her wedding in my front yard, Faith Bafford, now Faith Fire, she married a young man from Colombia, South America, who was at CSU on a tennis scholarship. Well, they wanted to have a wedding outdoors, and how it came about for my house, I don't know, but they came out and they looked at the house and the yard, and the church next door would let them have the reception there. So they set up a trellis out in the yard, and about 100 chairs were placed out, and a minister from church West Ashley, no, not West Ashley, from Mount Pleasant, where Faith played the piano, had the service, and also Dr. Skip Martin, who's no longer at CSU, he came and he translated the whole service into Spanish. And I wondered how he knew Spanish so well, and I said, why is this? He says, I was a missionary in Mexico or South America, somewhere like that. He says, so I speak Spanish fluently. So he translated the whole service for those of us who didn't know Spanish. And then there was a nice reception in the church's parish hall. And there was a lot of dancing and a lot of something called merengue, macarena, whatever that was. It was a lot of fun. And Faith dressed in the house, and I have a picture of her standing, it must be her father, coming down the steps. So it was a nice occasion. And the other occasion was a young, Faith of course was a music therapy student, an excellent student. Another excellent music therapy student was Catherine Compton. She was in the CSU pageant. She didn't win it, but she was a very nice looking young lady. She asked me at a lesson one time if I would escort her. I said, I would be delighted to do it, but certainly you have a boyfriend that would be happy to escort you. She said, no, my grandfather was to do it, and he can't do it. So I said, I'd be delighted. So I walked out on the football field at the halftime when everybody was introduced, and someone made a picture of the two of us together, and I have that sitting on my desk. And some time ago, I got an email from her saying, I'm sure you don't remember me. I answered her and said, I see you every day. I look at the picture on my desk.
You have done many important things in your life. I'd like you to talk about being a part of launching the Charleston Music Teachers Association. This is part of the South Carolina Music Teachers Association and the National Music Teachers Association. CMTA, as it is called today, still thrives.
Way back, it must have been in the early 60s, Mr. Russell Ragg was very prominent in music circles in Charleston. He taught in New York for a long time and retired to Charleston. And he was contacted by a man who was on the faculty at Converse about organizing a chapter of MTNA in Charleston. And his name was George Luchtenberg. And he was very active in MTNA, where he was in Converse, and I guess nationally also. But he came down, Mr. Ragg and DuBose Robertson, a prominent local musician, voice teacher and piano teacher. The three of us met with Dr. Luchtenberg, and that's how the local chapter came about.
Tell us about your family.
Well, my first wife was Catherine Stevens. She was a singer, and she studied piano with me. And at one lesson, I simply asked if she would consider going out with the piano teacher. And she said yes. So we went out, and 3 years later we were married. And she did music work in churches. And I have 3 sons, and none of them wanted to pursue music. I guess they had enough of their father pursuing it. I have 2 grandchildren, twins, with my youngest son. My middle boys never married. The oldest boy, two grandchildren, and I think 2 great-grandchildren. And my present wife is Virginia Powers. Her husband, her late husband and I, we grew up together, studied music with the same teacher, piano. For me, piano and voice for him. And when our spouses died, we somehow made contact, and we've been married now for 10 years.
What is your favorite saying to tell your students about practicing the piano? We could probably recite it to you.
My favorite saying
About practicing the piano to your students.
I don't know what you're referring to. The only thing I say is you need to practice every day, and it's better to practice a little bit every day than to practice a lot one day and skip 2 days.
I guess the saying I'm thinking of is fast practice.
Oh, I have a sign on the wall in my office. Fast practice is slow progress. Slow practice is fast progress. No practice is no progress. I also have another thing on my on the bulletin board outside my office. It's a quotation from the famous opera singer Enrico Caruso. Someone asked him the secret of his success. He said, 10% inspiration, I had to be prompted on that, and 90% perspiration, and that's what gives it to you, the 90% perspiration.
Do you have any funny moments at CSU that you can remember that you'd like to share? And then
I do. I think Dr. Cutno was the head of the music department for a long time, and he was a very, very fine person and a strong supporter of me, for which I was very, very thankful. Sometimes, I remember the first instance when I experienced this, I heard Dr. Cutno hollering down the hall, "Damn it, come here! Damn it, come here!" And I said, "What on earth is going on? That sounds like Dave. Is he calling a student?" Come to find out, Dr. Cutno had a little dog, and the dog's name was Damn It. And when he brought it to school, and the dog ran down the hall, he was calling it to come back. And I guess giving the dog that name was Dr. Cutno's way of letting off some steam.
Okay.
And another experience I had really was an embarrassing moment. I was in the hospital waiting to have quintuple bypass surgery, and the telephone rang, and there were a number of my students in the room that were talking, and one had brought a guitar, they were playing guitar, and some of them were singing, and there was a lot of noise in the room. The telephone rang, I picked it up, and the voice started talking to me, and I couldn't understand what was going on. I finally had to say, "Now who is this that's speaking?" And the voice came back, "This is Dr. Jerry Hunter, president of Charleston Southern University." Well, you can imagine how embarrassed I was that I didn't recognize Dr. Hunter's voice on the phone. And I told him what was going on in the room, but he was good-natured about it, and he had called to wish me well. And I greatly appreciated the fact that he called. And sometime later, I saw him coming into the Strom Thurman student building, and I finally got around after several years to apologizing to him, and he laughed, and he's good-natured, nice person. Another story. Earlier in the interview, I said I never met a student that I didn't like, and that's true. I'm talking about people who were music students. There was a student in a music appreciation class that I did not dislike the student, I just disliked something that he did. He complained about having a test every week. Well, it was a once-a-week class, and the best way to pass the class would be to be tested every week rather than having to build up so much information over several weeks. And then he would fall asleep in class. And what was bad about it, he would snore. That was the thing that was really bad about it. And when it got so loud, we had to shake him. It was like the aria La Calunnia in Rossini's opera, The Barber of Seville. La Calunnia is about gossip, how it keeps building and building and building. So, that was fun.
Anything else?
I think that's about it.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to say?
What I would like to say is, all these many years that I've been at CSU, I've enjoyed every minute of it. I've never met a student in the music school that I did not like. I could not have had a better working life. Everybody that I came in contact with as a student, as far as administration and faculty was concerned, were very helpful. And that's always been the case since I've been on the faculty. I've never had any problems with anything. And I really thank the Lord, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, that I've had such a wonderful experience. I could not have worked at a better place.
Thank you so much for the honor and privilege to have this time with you. You are a man of greatness, great faith, great honor, and great humility. You are also a great teacher and a great man. There is no one like you, Eugene Koester.
Thank you.